Hi, this is David at MASH IT. Now if you follow our channel, you'll know that we've reviewed the Alienware X17 probably about a month ago now. We absolutely loved that laptop. The performance was great, the new cooling system is great, but we had the 3070 model with the 11800H 11th gen CPU. And after that review, Dell dropped some incredible coupons and I managed to pick up the 3080 model. I got it at such a good price that this is a laptop that I'm going to be keeping for myself. So I wanted to do a very quick review tonight, and I'm not really going to be comparing it to the 3070, but I want to talk about why I've chosen the 3080 model and what differences there are with this over the 3070 model. So let's take a quick look around the laptop. Just a bit of a recap in case you can't remember the review. This is the new two-tone colour scheme with the lunar light outer and the dark side of the moon inner, with a choice of the cherry mechanical keyboard or just the standard memory that we've chosen to have on this laptop. But one of the differences you do get with the 3080 model is an RGB touchpad. Now this touchpad does look absolutely fantastic and it can be configured in Alienware Command Center. My only gripe is after 15 seconds it turns off. Now I wish we could also configure the duration of that in Command Center too. But it's a great touchpad, still works as well as the previous model, but you've obviously got this light to go with it. I do think that the whole range should have received this touchpad because this is their flagship laptop, but having the 3080 model, I'm enjoying it. Now that's a great feature that we get with the 3080 model. There's also a feature which is not quite so nice. If you remember the review, Alienware have redesigned the 240 watt power pack to give us a really slim and light unit that can easily travel with your slim and light laptop. We were really impressed with that because Dell have been using the same power packs for years. Now obviously with the 3080 it's got a higher TGP of 165 watts, so they're no longer able to use that 240 watt redesigned power pack. And instead we've got the old fashioned 330 watt power brick. Now this is the same brick they've been using for about the last 10 years and it is huge. Now it's a real shame and I was quite annoyed when I first pulled this out of the package. I was hoping for something a bit slimmer and redesigned. But in all honesty, having used this laptop for about 3 or 4 weeks now, I would much rather have this 330 watt brick and have no throttling and 165 watt TGP on this graphics card than I would a slimmer, lighter power pack and then them cut back some of the actual power limits on there. Because we are getting the full 165 watt on this graphics card and about 100 watts on this CPU, which is quite an incredible amount of power that you're putting through this slim laptop. Now I will drop a link to the Alienware X17 review in the description just in case you didn't see that review or if you want to familiarise yourself. So I'm not going to go through the ports and the screen options and everything again on this model, but I will say I was quite happy with the 165Hz base panel that they provided, so I've got that again with the 3080. But we've now also got a MUX switch added as there's one of the latest BIOS updates a few days ago. So that was one of our only gripes with the machine, has actually now been fixed as well. With the original review, we had 16GB of high density RAM. So I made sure when I ordered this model, I picked up 32GB and got the low density RAM, knowing that obviously this is going to perform much better than our original model did. And lastly, I put in a terabyte hard drive because it was such a cheap upgrade over the 512GB in the X17 3070 model we reviewed. Now it is only a Gen 3 drive in this model. If you want the Gen 4 drive, you need to order the 2TB. Everybody I know that has received their 2TB has had a Gen 4 Samsung drive. Now we did upgrade this drive to a Gen 4 ourselves. I will also link that video in the description below. It's a very easy process and we used the original heatsink from this Gen 3 drive and it coped perfectly well with that Gen 4 drive. So if you are interested, make sure you go and check that video out. But now let's have a quick look at the actual performance benchmarks. Now we also got the same 11800H CPU in this model because I was really impressed with that processor. I didn't feel the need to upgrade to the i9. So the benchmarks are very similar to our previous review. It's a fantastic chip. It will run pretty much 4.2 GHz across all 8 cores throughout these tests. So this is why we're getting really good results in Cinebench and Geekbench 5 CPU. Now when we're moving on to the GPU benchmarks, you can see that the scores, they don't look significantly higher than the 3070 model. We're only getting 12% higher in Firestrike on the graphics score, 16% higher in TimeSpy, and only 3% in Geekbench 5 OpenCL. So this doesn't look like a great deal of an improvement over the 3070. And when we move to a couple of the game benchmarks at 1080p, we're only getting an extra 2% on Shadow of the Tomb Raider at 128 frames per second, and we're only getting about 4% higher on Warhammer Total War. So on paper, looking at these benchmarks, it's not that impressive. And I would say to you, if you are going to be gaming on the 1080p screen and you're not using an external monitor or you haven't bought the 4K model, I would say happily get that 3070, save yourself some money, providing you can live without the RGB touchpad. You will get that nice slim power pack and you're going to get amazing 1080p performance. But where the 3080 comes into its own is when you are gaming at a higher resolution. Not only do we get double the VRAM at 16 gigabytes, which is going to certainly future-proof this laptop as far as you can future-proof any laptop, I found gaming at 4K or on my 34-inch ultra-wide is a fantastic experience on this 3080. The 165-watt TGP and that 16 gigabyte of RAM, it's just cutting through my games, whereas the 3070 would often struggle. So, looking at temperatures, let's see how well this new cooling system is coping with this 165-watt TGP 3080. Okay, so I've been playing Warzone for a little while now just to test the temperatures and the fan noise. Now, unfortunately, Warzone Season 5, you can't use the overlay anymore, so I can't actually put the temperatures on screen, but I want to check the external temperatures anyway. So first is here the fan noise on balanced. That's about 50 decibels or 51 decibels, which is very similar to the previous version with the 3070. Okay, I just want to check the external temperatures of the laptop. So the WASD keys are 37 degrees. So it's warm, but it's not hot. The middle of the keyboard, it goes up to 42 degrees. Again, you can keep your fingers there. You certainly feel it, but it's not uncomfortable. As I go to the right side of the keyboard, it starts dropping down to 37 again. And if I look at it above the actual keyboard itself, where the heat is pumping out the back, it's 54.5 degrees, 55 degrees. That's really hot. I wouldn't want to keep my hand here for any length of time. That is very hot. But at least the temperature's well managed. And if we look at the palm rest as well, they're not even warm at all. 32 degrees. That's absolutely comfortable. So you can certainly comfortably game on this laptop without getting, sweaty palms, which is really nice. So just want to do a little bit of gaming now. I'm plugged into my Alienware 34-inch 120Hz ultra-wide. This is how I normally set up on my desk when I'm playing. As much as I love using a laptop screen, you cannot beat using a nice 34-inch ultra-wide. But the 3440 by 1440p resolution is quite hard for most of these machines to push. So this is where the 3080 16GB really comes in handy. So starting off, I'm going to play a little bit of Apex. Again, running at the 1440p resolution. We've got G-Sync turned on. And obviously, as I was saying, this is where that 165-watt TGP 3080 comes in handy, because this should be able to push some decent frames per second for me. So running the Alienware Command Center on balanced mode. So the temperatures are a little bit higher than obviously if I'm on performance or full fan. But even then, running about probably 50 decibels, 4.2 gigahertz on this processor, and we're at 83 degrees, which is it's more than acceptable. This is where the 4-fan cooling system really comes into play with this laptop. So we can see how well the 3080 performs, but I do want to just check how does it affect the battery life. So running the same battery tests as I did with the 3070, which is turning off the RGB, putting it at 50% brightness, putting it in battery saver mode within Alienware Command Center profiles, I managed to get just over 5.5 hours of YouTube streaming over Wi-Fi. That's really quite impressive and pretty much the same as I got with the 3070. Now I am going to try and tweak that battery a little bit further in the future to see if we can get any more out of it. But I also checked it by switching on the new Muck switch and having it in dedicated mode. Now if you put it into dedicated graphics mode, you're only going to get 2 to 3 hours of light use. So if you do want the battery life, you will need to be switching it back to Optimus to get that. And that is with the base panel. Obviously if you've got the 4K or if you've got the 360Hz panel, you're going to have lower battery life. Right, so that about wraps things up. So in conclusion, as I said earlier on, if you're planning on buying this laptop to game on a 1080p screen, then the 3070 is a great option. Save the cash, get the smaller power supply, and you'll be more than happy with it. It's a fantastic machine. But if you want to spend that little bit extra, if you want that RGB touchpad, if you're running a higher resolution like the 4K display, or like myself, running a 34-inch ultra-wide, the 3080 is a fantastic card, and this laptop chassis more than copes with the 165-watt TGP that it can push out. And if you're buying anything from Dell, always look out for those vouchers. There's always vouchers floating around, or wait until there's a good one, because I managed to pick this up for £1,900 for a 3080 with 11800H CPU, 32GB of RAM and a TB SSD. That's quite a steal of a price. Now admittedly that was a good one that doesn't come up very often, but if you keep your eyes peeled, there very often is some great bargains to be had on the Dell website. Well, that's it for this video. If you've got any questions, pop them down in the comment section down below and I will get back to you. And lastly, thank you for watching.